Okay, so with the Picade bar top, I just wanted to go through the wiring a little bit more, and I have found out some pretty interesting things that I wanted to share. The first thing that I wanted to show everyone is the ATX, or the 4-pin computer or IDE style, SATA style power supply that I'm using here. Has both 5 and 12 volt outs on it, and you'll see that I basically just made a cable that has our 12 volts on just some female pin head, and then just some regular micro USB for the 5 volts, and that plugs in to the hat down here, which is mounted atop of our Raspberry Pi 3. And now you can kind of see down in here a little bit better how everything is mounted. And we'll look up in here, and you can see there's our video driver board, and I actually went ahead and soldered wires directly to the video driver board underneath this connector, because it is blocked off by the casing itself, where I had to mount it. I could actually move it over a little bit, but not enough to get it to clear that connector, so I just went ahead and soldered to the bottom of it. It made it easier. And then on this little guy over here, we just went ahead and hot glued him into place. I have not actually drawn in a seated mounting plate for him yet, so that you can screw it down. So hot glue does the job. It's not like there's a whole lot of voltage running through it. It's a 5-volt device, so it doesn't create much heat. I've had it on for hours and hours, and there's no noticeable heat on the bottom of that board whatsoever. And we're powering that little guy right here with another set of male-female headers so that we can disconnect the whole top if we want to. Same with these. We can just disconnect the screen, and then we disconnect our HDMI, and the whole top basically comes off. And then down here we're pulling 5 volts directly off of our Picade hat and a ground from the side here, and that's what we're powering our little Arduino light controller and the lights themselves behind the marquee with, because that 5 volts is plenty of power. I mean, you're talking not even 250 milliamp to power that whole assembly. I think it's actually about 150. So more than enough power in the Pi circuit and the Picade circuit left over to deal with that and not have to add extra stuff to it. One interesting thing that I did find out when I got this little guy delivered the other day, this is a DC to DC boost converter step-up voltage regulator voltage stabilizer. It's a little adjustable power supply. You adjust it with this little set screw right there. That little guy right there is a set screw that you can just adjust the voltage with. What I did was I just basically hooked up a USB micro to this end and hooked up a voltmeter to this end and dialed it in to 12 volts, and then made this little cable assembly for it so that it could hook up to my screen controller and power the screen itself. And I have here a RAV Power, probably one of the best portable batteries I've ever owned. This is a RAV Power, and I believe this is the PB41. This is a 26,800 milliamp hour boost battery, and this thing has a 5 volt 5.5 amp max with a max of 2.4 amps on one port. One thing to keep in mind about this battery, this is a 1.1 amp connector, this is a 2.1 amp connector, and this one over here furthest away from the charge port is a 2.4 amp connector. This is where you want to power your Picade from, is this guy right here. I figured this out on my Odroid XU4. It will only run off of this port. It will not run off of this one. And the Pi throws a constant battery warning when you're changing screens from one emulator to the next or something along those lines. It will constantly throw a battery warning on this 2.1. It's just not enough on those peak usages. Down at 1.1, obviously, it won't even turn the thing on. So what I did figure out, though, is that this battery, this 26,800 milliamp hour battery, will run this entire assembly, the 12 volt screen, without overheating this little guy, this little boost converter. You can actually keep it in your fingers while this thing is running on hour 5, and it's still cool enough that there's no possible way it could melt any of these components or loosen any of the solder or destroy this little copper coil. I'm pretty sure with a little heat sink here on the back that it would run long term. I'm going to do some more testing on it and report back, but as far as I'm concerned, this thing is battery powered right now. I ran it all night last night and had it in my lap, had it walking around the house, no problem. It runs the Picade, doesn't throw any battery warnings for the Raspberry Pi, and it's just got everything humming in here. So I will list a link to the battery itself, and I will list a link to the boost converter that I bought for a whopping $7 and something off of Amazon. And you can give those things a try and have have yourselves one of these little Picade bar tops, HD bar tops that's battery powered. Enjoy!